I have aged a little over the years, but... Hey! Hi! It's me, Wilma Fingerdoo, with the Fingerdoo review of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 14, Episode 8. Oh, we're over the hump. But before we get started, well, I've got a few people to thank. First of all, from the Tipperdoo zone, my Tipperdoo boyfriend, Vito. Thank you so much, Vito. You're a sweetheart. I also want to send a thank you out to Nick Sweet, a.k.a. Positive Sakura, a.k.a. Sweet Silver, for sending me this surprisingly gorgeous little palette. I'm actually wearing it right now. It's the limited edition ColourPop Powerpuff Girls palette. It's such a fun spring-like yum sparkle that I had to break it out, even though this is not available to buy. Suffer! Be jealous! And I'm also, to compliment it, Rodney sent me this fabulous wig. Hey, Rodney, I hope your shoulder's feeling better. Y'all may know Rodney. He's Michael Bergantino's friend and roommate. Michael, as you know, is recovering from open heart surgery. I was chatting with Michael, and he's slowly but surely on the mend and wants to thank everyone for their support and love through his post-surgery. Here's to healing. Oh, well, I guess now we're on to this. Jorge, drink me! Oh, okay, what? Coke and vodka? No, Coke and rum. When'd you get rum? Cuba Libre, is that what it's called? Yum. Oh. Okay, let's get to it. We kicked this episode off with a full deck. No one had been eliminated, so the only thing left to do was congratulate Lady Camden on her first win. And well, they should. LC's been on an upward trajectory, and it was just a matter of time. But it was nothing near as epic as the triumph of Daya breaking the safe zone. So she got a well-deserved round of applause, too. Jasmine quietly stewed in her own juices. She clearly didn't see why Daya had been in the top. Of course, that little bitterness didn't stop her from pointing out to the rest of the queens that yet again, Ru had complimented all of them on how good they are. Here's to being good, seriously. As the queens de-dragged, Deja and Georges talked to Jasmine about how difficult it must have been for her to come out as trans in Untucked last week. Jasmine admitted to a weight being lifted off her shoulders, but she was worried about her dad. He was okay with her being gay, but a drag queen? He needed to be helped through that one. Who's to say how he'll react to Jasmine's being trans? Needless to say, there was a lot of love and support in that room, so, well, she's got a good base to start with anyway. You go and tell your dad, Jasmine, seriously. Carrie would have been right there showing her support if Angie hadn't have just read her for having furry thighs. Well, that took the pail. Carrie chased Angie all over that workroom to teach her what's what, but she either ran out of steam or the friction from all that thigh hair was slowing her down. I don't know which it was, but Angie survived to read another day. Here's to Angie. She's very spry. The next day in the workroom, the queens were starting to feel the reality of the situation, and no one expressed it better than Bosco. She said she has a whole bunch of friends, but she doesn't have one $100,000. The other queens completely agreed. Thank God Ru showed up to break their reverie with this week's mini challenge. The library was open because reading is what? Fundamental. The queens were gagged. Carrie channeled her inner auntie and didn't suck. Angie went in hard and got personal on a hysterical level. Elsie's reads got better and more vicious as she went along. Deja didn't do too badly, but, well, she wasn't the best either. Georges's white do crack read at Jasmine was brilliant. Speaking of Jasmine, it was surprising that she wasn't better for all that talking she does. Seriously. Willow killed it. There, I said it. Daya let it get slightly personal, especially where Jasmine was concerned, so it was awkward. Bosco killed it as well, but her long and winding group burn of the queens letting Ru down on the runway one more time was well worth the trip. So it was no surprise that she was this week's winner. Ru suggested that Lady Camden may have been a close second. Good for you, LC. And then it was time for this week's Maxi Challenge. The queens were going back in time and recreating the legendary girl group magic of the 60s. That's when I was born. The queens would have to divide themselves into 3 girl groups and write their own lyrics to a retro song. Their choices were the Shang-Rulas singing Bad Boy Baby, the Runettes singing He's My Baby, and the RuPreems singing Baby Is Love. No, seriously, I was born in the 60s. Stop asking. Right away, the queens gave the songs a listen. Willow had a point. They didn't want to just pick the right song, but they also had to pick people that they could work well with. Right out of the gate, it seemed like everybody wanted Bad Boy by the Shangri-Las, but as they went around one by one, it seemed that no one wanted to be a Runette. Being the bigger queens, or just wanting to avoid a fight, Georges and Jasmine offered to be Runettes. Daya became a little defiant as who would become the third Runette was discussed. To be fair, no one was budging, so Deja was the bigger queen and offered to be a Runette, and no, that's not a fat joke. Sorry, Deja! Although she was thrilled to keep her first choice of being a Shangri-La, Daya wasn't grateful for Deja's sacrifice. Hey, if you don't want a villain at it, Shut Your Mushmaker. Also, Shut Your Mushmaker was the name of my fringe play. And then the queens broke up into their groups. Bosco told her other Shangri-La girls, Daya and Willow, it would be best to treat this as a group challenge and help build up the lyrics and their characters. Daya also pointed out how strongly they all wanted to be part of this group, so they had better do their best. And as bad as Willow felt about being selfish, she didn't let it hold her back from getting started on her lyrics. I thought it was hilarious when Daya suggested a scenario that she couldn't think of the word for. All she could come up with was walking in the woods, but it was a gay thing. Willow thought she meant hiking. Well, she is from Denver, Colorado, bless. Thank God Bosco knew that she meant cruising, or the Shangri-Las were over before they even got started. Figures Bosco would know the word cruising. Over on the Runettes, even though none of them picked this group as their first choice, they all seemed ready to do their best work. And then Jasmine started singing. Or she barked her shin on the coffee table. Either way, everyone was expecting a visit from Mr. Auto-Tune during her recording session. I thought she was in pain. Over on Team RuPreems, Carrie pointed out that the Supremes are Ru's favorite girl group, so they had better not screw it up. Angie assured her she had this because, well, she does Diana Ross in her act. Carrie was excited to do some singing and to bring a little church into her big finish. LC just seemed pleased to not be one of the white bitches on the other teams Carrie seemed to have it in for. Carrie's a tall girl. I'd be scared of her. She could smack you into next week, seriously. And then it was time to record their verses with Michelle Visage and writer-producer David Steinberg. The RuPreems were up first, and Angeria was the first to take the mic. I don't think Angeria did badly. I was just surprised at how low her singing voice was. All in all, she did a good job. Carrie's session was a little rougher, but Michelle helped her through it. But for someone who's so full of life, I was surprised at how deadpan poor Carrie was. I thought she'd have more fun with this, seriously. The Shangri-Las were up next, and for all their worry, Daya did a great job. She had a character voice, she stayed in key, and except for some, well, questionable lyrics, I thought Daya nailed it. Good for her. Sing on, sister. The Runettes were last to the mic, and even though they all said they couldn't sing, the only thing that was holding Deja back were her nerves. She had a good voice and stayed in key. She just needed to pepper her ice, and, well, she'd be all the way there. The queen who had the biggest battle ahead of her was poor sweet little Georges. God bless. Not only was she tone deaf, but she had no sense of rhythm or timing. Even David Steinberg had to give her a note to slow it down. And in a very painful session with Michelle, we discovered that Georges was also fond of adding syllables where there weren't any in the first place. It was a hot mess. And the choreo session didn't go any better. Because there was no choreographer, Deja voted herself to be choreographer for her team, but she's a cheer coach, so she just ended up confusing and complicating things for the Runettes. Willow was smart. She did have some choreography experience and, well, smartly kept it to herself until the Shangri-Las rehearsal, and then pow! The other team was scared of them. More than a few of the queens even commented on Willow's sense of rhythm. They saw how she was keeping her skills on the down low. She's shady. LC took on the choreography role for the RuPreems, and for the most part, what she came up with wasn't too involved. But then by the time Diana was ready to leave the group, The Supremes weren't really reinventing their wheel either. I thought the choreo was appropriate even if some of the queens had questions. Poor Angie was wondering if she had any sense of rhythm at all. She had meant to say she had 2 left feet, but it came out as 2 white feet. Still, we all know what she meant. I can't dance, can you? That's not dancing. And then it was Elimination Day. As the queens got ready, they talked about their fave girl groups. Of course, LC was all about the Spice Girls. Angie was a queen after my own heart, loving herself some En Vogue and SWV. And then Carrie talked about how her mother didn't allow secular music into the home and the frustration she felt at seeing people on TV doing what they wanted, but she wasn't allowed to do that herself. That must have been awful for her to grow up like that. Bless. Daya wanted to talk about Bosco winning the reading challenge, but really what she wanted to do was ask Jasmine what she had meant when she read Daya about having 2 faces. Apparently, Jasmine heard what Daya had said about the Glamazon Prime challenge and how she just draped fabric on her body. Personally, I think those 2 should make out already. And then it was time for the runway. I absolutely hated what Ru had on. She looked like a lamp in a whorehouse. Not that there's anything wrong with being a lamp in a whorehouse, but still, if the bottom of the dress had been a plain sheath, it may have looked a little less gaudy, but still, that was a lot of tinsel for February. Michelle looked gorgeous in green, giving us the cold shoulder. Carson was back looking all kinds of handsome in his glittery black and gray striped suit. And joining them on the judges panel this week was the one and only my favorite secret Hollywood boyfriend, Alec Mappa. Oh my God, I love him. Alec, call me. The Shangri-Las went first, and I thought they did a great job. They all worked well together, and their lyrics didn't suck. Here's to the Shangri-Las. Well done. Next was the Runettes. I thought they did a better job off the top. Deja looked fabulous and sounded great. Georges looked fabulous too, but Michelle's idea to have her talk her lyrics was genius. Seriously. And then poor Jasmine started singing. You have to appreciate how bad her singing was if this was Auto-Tune's idea of an improvement, is all I'm saying. Bless. But still, I thought they did a good job. Finally, it was the RuPremes, and right off the hop, Angie killed it. Carrie did a great job too, even if she may have been slightly over-animated. LC seemed to have that little Diana Ross head bop going, but all in all, I think they may have edged out the Runettes. And then it was time for the runway. Category is Heart On. Willow Pill was first in a heart thong hobble dress. I liked where she was going with the look, but I didn't like it as a runway, so I have to give her a finger don't. I'm sorry to say. Diabetti's neon love look was stunning, right down to her spray-painted boots. I had to give this look a finger do, seriously. Bosco's runway was gorgeous. It wasn't a very original theme, and we've seen better cutout reveals in Detox's runways at least, but I thought she looked gorgeous and well-deserving of a finger do, seriously. I didn't like Deja's runway. As an outfit, it was cute, but for a runway category, I thought it was kind of lazy. So I gave her a finger don't. The simplicity of Georges's Vegas Heart Showgirl was breathtaking. The best part, her ode to Blair St. Clair. How could I not give her a finger do? Also, Vegas Heart was my drag queen name in high school. I love Jasmine Kennedy's runway. That gown was gorgeous, although that one heart on her hip looked like it was in the way. It was so three-dimensional that I thought there may be something in it, but no. Still, I gave her a finger do. I loved Angeria's runway. It was so different from what she's worn before that I didn't even recognize her off the top. The only problem with wigs like this is it's hard to keep the bangs cut straight. They shift and move and go all wonky, so I was distracted by that, but not enough not to give her a finger do, seriously. The best thing about Carrie Colby's runway was her makeup. I didn't recognize her at first. She looked stunning, but that costume wasn't very good, and her tights just stopped at the middle of her body. She really should have worn like a body stocking or something to hide that waistline. Even though I love her, I had to give Carrie a finger don't. Bless. Lady Camden's Victim of Cupid was stunning, if not a little costumey, but that's why I liked it. It was dramatic and over the top and worthy of a finger do for me. And then it was time for the judges' critiques. To get it rolling, Ru announced that even though they worked in teams, they would be judged as individuals, and then told Willow, Bosco, and Georges that they were all safe. So they frigged off to the Untucked lounge. Daya Betty was up first, and Michelle was impressed. She felt Daya stayed in character the whole time and had that little extra that made her stand out in a girl group without being distracting. And both Carson and Alec loved her runway. Deja was next, and right away Michelle called her out on lying about her singing skills. Carson thought she did a great job capturing the 60s vibe, and Alec loved her runway, although he wished she'd gone further with it, like thigh-high boots or an invisible plane. I mean, who's to say Deja didn't have that invisible plane already? Jasmine's singing skills were obviously questionable, but Carson also noticed her lack of confidence where the choreography was concerned. Jasmine got emotional over this, and Ru had to talk her down, bless. Angeria was next, and as a Supremes Diana Ross superfan, Ru thought Angie killed it. Alec loved her runway as well, so it was a good night for Miss Van Michael, seriously. Carrie was next, and although Michelle liked where Carrie got to vocally, she felt her mannerisms were a little too big and took them all to church in a big old gospel way. As for her runway, Carson thought it was a little overdone, while Michelle couldn't get over her pantyhose just stopping at her waist. Alec made a good point. He wants to remember her, not her body. Can't we do both? Last but not least was Lady Camden. Even though her look was a little costumey, everyone loved it. But Carson thought that Elsie got a little lost in the sauce during the performance, while Michelle thought she was letting her shyness hold her back. And with that, the rest of the queens frigged off to the Untucked lounge. Meanwhile, the safe queens were all happy to be safe, although both Bosco and Willow were itching for another win. As they all reclined and enjoyed a bevy, they reflected on Daya Betty taking the reading challenge too seriously. Apparently, she didn't like being called two-faced by Jasmine, and, well, Bosco was living for it. Willow chalked it all up to the pressure of Daya getting eliminated that first week, and although she was in the top last week, nothing helps build that confidence like a challenge win. That said, Willow was sure Daya was in the top again this week. Then their conversation turned to body image and how not doing drag during the pandemic affected them. Willow had a particularly unique experience due to her illness. As a baby queen, she didn't think too much about her body image, but as she's aging, it's something that she's definitely given more thought to. Now I am too, I'm just gonna say. And then the rest of the queens arrived. For the most part, it seemed like Deja, Daya, and Angie were in the top, and they all were more than thrilled. Carrie, Elsie, and Jasmine were in the bottom, but of the three, Jasmine was sure she was going to have to lip sync over Elsie. Daya took a moment to thank her team for helping her with the choreography, but she did admit to being selfish when it came to the challenge because, well, she needed to show the judges what she could do, and if that made her two-faced, then so be it. Did you see what she did there? I'm so glad that Bosco asked Daya why that critique seemed to bother her so much, because it was obviously a trigger for Miss Betty. Bless her. Daya didn't really answer the question, but she did say that she wasn't going to let friendships keep her from winning the competition, and if people got hurt along the way, so be it. As far as Daya was concerned, those people weren't that interested in the competition in the first place. Apparently, Miss Betty has enough friends. When the queens returned to the runway, it was announced that Daya Betty was this week's winner. Hallelujah. Let the bells ring. Here's to Daya Betty. Let's hope that calms her down a bit, seriously. Landing in the bottom this week, sadly, was Jasmine Kennedy and Carrie Colby. Oh, needless to say, Elsie was beyond relieved. Jasmine and Carrie had to lip sync to Toni Braxton's Unchained My Heart, but not the good version. I guess they couldn't afford that version, so they went with the Hex Hector remix. It was awful. Unbreak My Heart is a hard enough song to lip sync to, but this version's rhythm and tempo made it almost impossible. I won't lie, I was worried for Carrie. She's a stunning queen, but there's very little proof of how well she'd do in a lip sync. And she did very little to change that. Jasmine started emoting right out of the gate. She ditched her long skirt, and then she accidentally ditched one of her shoes during a high kick, but she didn't let that slow her down. She kept the other shoe on and continued to strut it out. Here's to Jasmine, seriously. Carrie had some moves and moments, but she came off more as a girl dancing at the club than a queen lip-syncing for her life. So when the music stopped, I wasn't surprised that Jasmine won. Now all that was left to do was for Carrie to open her chocolate bar to see if it was gold. It wasn't. And as Jasmine shed more than a few tears, Carrie sashayed away. I'm so sorry to see Carrie go. Not that I thought she would win at all. I just thought she'd go a little further. I really liked her. So, what do you think? Did the right two queens land in the bottom? Did the right queen go home? Who do you think could be next? Will Deja coast her way to the win? All we can do is tune in to RuPaul's Drag Race Season 14 next week, and when you're done, you come on back and you see me so you and I can compare notes. Now, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and please check out the links in my description box for ways you can help support me and my channel. Until next week, miss me! Seriously. It was a good challenge this week. I love that they had the reading challenge. That gave everybody something to think about. And then, you know, the fact that they all actually had to sing. I know that most drag queens don't sing live. More are now, I think, but it's not usually a prerequisite. But when they do actually have to sing, and are responsible for their own choreography, oh boy, does that ever separate the queens from the boys in dresses, let me tell you what. Oh, I really do hope that Daya winning a challenge calms her down that little bit. Just takes that edge off, because I really like Daya, but what they're showing us is starting to really burn my bunions. Do you know what I'm saying? Caramelize my onions. I don't know. It's just, I don't think Daya's a bad person, but she's certainly coming off as, well, a shallow person anyway. And I don't think she is.